Hey YouTube, today we're going to go over whether the nerfs to Pokemon make them unusable. Because if you look at the sort of new rankings here, let me just bring them up. Um, we have Pokemon like, let's just look at the counter users because those are the obvious nerfs, right? So stop yelling at me with the counters. Okay, let's move this over so you guys can see a little bit. Okay, too many things in the background here. Okay, so we have Machamp that is risen to the top as a as a Karate Chop user. But then when you actually look, so this is just highlighting all the Pokemon that have counter. But as you can see, Karate Chop, Shadow Claw, Mud Slap, Shadow Claw, they're not using it. The first counter user in the Great League is rank 121 with Medi with counter, and then your Poliwrath at 127, and Annihilape, which was a top 3 Pokemon in pretty much every league, is sitting at 147. So you may be wondering to yourself, how does a energy generation decrease of what is just going to be 1 on all these counter users drop them substantially? And that's why we're going to look at some numbers, and then I'm going to talk about whether or not these are going to be as bad as the rankings are, or if there is a possibility to use them, but they just aren't as good as before. So let's take a look at moves here just to understand what this means. So these are the moves from last season, pre-buff. So these are all the moves. When you organize by damage per turn here, you got your super hard-hitting Charm and Razor Leafers, but they charge extremely slow. You got Dragon Tail, which is a 3-turn moves. And just to put this in perspective, everyone uses Dragon Breath, even though when you look at the damage and energy per turn, it makes, in a raw damage perspective, it actually makes sense to run Dragon Tail. But because Dragon Tail is a 3-turn move and Dragon Breath is 1-turn move, sometimes this 1-turn move actually is, 1-turn move is better for a variety of reasons: fast move timing, and ability to catch on other Pokemon, less of likely of them being able to catch on you. But having a 1-turn move here actually helps them get to a move sometimes. So that is why, despite the damage per turn being better in general for Dragon Tail, Dragon Breath is used. But now we go down to the 4s, and if you see an outlier right here, that outlier was counter. It had that 4 damage, but as you can see, compared to everything else, except for Incinerate, which is a 5-turn move, Incinerate's, in terms of damage and energy, is the best, but we know it is a 4 and 4 because it is a 5-turn move, and those are extremely tricky to deal with, to use. So that is why they gave Incinerate a 4/4. But if you're looking at every other move here, 4 by 3.5 is the best, and so you're only losing half of energy compared to Incinerate, but you're a 2-turn move, right, compared to a 5-turn move. So just based on stats alone, you could see it was broken. It was the best move, right? It was the best move. And now what's going to happen is when you organize by the damage, you can see the energy per turn drops from a 3.5 to 3. And you may be thinking, who cares? What is half of energy per turn? Well, that half energy per turn puts you from being above everything else to now being tied with Dragon Breath, Confusion, and Gust. And when is the last time that you heard Dragon Breath, Confusion, or Gust being lauded as like an overpowered fast move? It's not. And the reason is, unfortunately, half an energy per turn is significant. And let's bring up the current season movesets to the old one. Let's go with Annihilape, because Annihilape has been ranked number 3 down to number 147. So how can half of an energy cost you that much, right? So in the old stats, Night Slash was just 5/5/5/5. So you do 5 counters and you get to a Night Slash. And Shadow Ball was 8/8/8/8. So those are the old numbers for Annihilape. in the current meta, that those 5s and 8s turns into 6s and a 10-9-9-9. So we just lost we lost 1 full energy per turn, but in a turn perspective, which is a 1, right? Counters a 2-turn move, but when we measure energy per turn, that's measured in a 1-turn move. So losing that 1, that 0.5 energy per turn, that 1 energy overall, now makes it 1 extra counter the first time to get to that, 1 extra counter the second one. So that's 2 net. And if you are in straight Shadow Ball, that's 2 extra on the first and 1 extra center. So now you have to do 3 extra counters just to go back to get to 2 Shadow Balls. And 3 extra counters is essentially 3 seconds. And that in GBL time is a long time, right? When you have so many moves that are so close to each other here, right? Now look at these new counter went from being one of the fast moves. We already talked about Incinerate. Now Sucker Punch is your old counter clone. So Sucker Punch now has the same stats that counter did last season, which is why everyone thinks that's going to be a broken move. And you still have now Astonish that got buffed to 3.33. So close to Sucker Punch, not quite there. Mud Slap, which got bumped, right? So now you have Incinerate we already knew was better. But now you have Sucker Punch, Astonish, Mud Slap, all better than Confusion in the damage energy combo there. And then even with a bunch of these moves. And then, like, if you just look at it, I said like half makes a difference, like 0.5 makes a difference. You're only 0.34 away from Waterfall in terms of the energy per turn. And like Waterfall was one, like, for those of you who used like Empoleon in the past, like part of the times when it was unusable, yes, it was like, oh, it's so hard hitting, but it's slow to charge. It's like, yeah, we're now getting into like the almost slow to charge area, right? So counter, same, and now we'll look at same thing, Mudshot. In terms of energy generation, in the past here, Mudshot, Poison Sting, Psycho Cut, and Thundershock, all, and Fairy Wind, all clones of each other. 9 energy, 2-turn move. So 4.5 energy per turn. They all did very, very low damage. Now you got nerfed. Now that 4.5, so you still have, so 2 things happen. One is Poison Sting and Fairy Wind got buffed in the damage. So you still have that 4.5, but now you have a little more damage per turn, 1.2 instead of 1.5. You still have the Psycho Cut and Thundershock there. But now, in terms of energy, you're down here at 4 energy. And look how many other things have 4 energy. But a lot of these other things, so you're now a clone of Infestation, Hex, Fury Cutter, Sand Attack, and you now are behind in terms of the energy and damage of Vine Whip, Quick Attack, Powder Snow, Double Kick, Volt Switch, Shadow Claw. Shadow Claw is one of the best in game. Sidewave, which is getting buffed. That's taken into consideration potential double buff there. So there you go. You just took what was, besides Lock On, one of the best fast and energy generation combo, and you nerfed it to behind a substantial amount of other Pokemon. So when we talk about these nerfs of one is substantial in GBL. So Mudshot nerfed, Counter nerfed, Wing Attack nerf. We have seen how 1, because I just kind of showed you why 1 makes a difference. We've seen in the past some things get nerfed by 1 and they go into obscurity. Noctowl, Walrein. And again, some of that's like the meta change as well, like Lantern showed up everywhere. But some of that is just the fact that lowering your attack, the attack or energy up by 1 can make things irrelevant. So that's the explanation behind it. 10 minutes in. Are these Pokemon unusable? So now you need to consider, I guess, 2 things here. The first one is, is there a point to use them when there's other fighters available that have way better movesets. So we know we talked about sort of the broken moves, right? Of it was, remember how I went here, 4.5 and 1.5 was your mud shot, right? And hello, 4.5 and 2.5 is your karate chop. So people who used to say mud shot is broken, what do you think they're going to say about karate chop? And so now you have a bunch of fighters that have karate chop. Pangoro, Machamp, Machoke. I think that's actually probably it. No, Primeape. So a bunch of Pokemon have karate chop, which is now this like insane fast move. So for the first part, it's like, why would you not use what is almost guaranteed as one of the best fast moves in the game, if not top 2 or 3, depending on what you like argue damage versus energy. It's a broken move, right? So one, why wouldn't you use those other counter users? But if you don't have an Elite TM to put on Cross Chop or Karate Chop on Machamp, and you can't get Pangoro below 1500 for the Great League, can you still use Medine, Poliwrath, and Annihilape as your counter users? Now, what I'm going to do is just go back to the current rankings to show you the 140s currently. To show you that there is potential to still use these Pokemon, but they are few and far between. So, for example, in the current meta, I've used Cofagrigus, Jumpluff. I've seen people use Salazzle, Shadow Drapion, Shadow Vic, that plays a certain role, so I'll kind of ignore that. Ferrothorn. And I've tried Rainy Castform, stuff like that. So are these Pokemon completely unusable? No. There is a reason that they're down at the 140s and 150s. It is because they are much, much worse in comparison to others of their same typing above. If I was going to use a Pokemon again that's a counter user, which one would I use? It's funny because there's only 3 things that make Pokemon successful in GBL: stat product, typing, and moveset. So we know all these just took a moveset hurt the moveset, hurt the fast move. So why? Let's just look at these 3, because if you're going to use one of these counter users, it's going to be these 3 realistically: Medi, Poliwrath, or Annihilape. So Medi got nerfed with Psychic, which is why it's running the Dynamic Punch combo. Part of the reason a lot of people weren't using Medi last season is because Annihilape, just with its unique typing, and Shadow Ball rose to the top. So why would you use Medi when Annihilape pretty much fits the same bill with a quicker fast move with Night Slash Bait and a Shadow Ball, which let me just check Dynamic Punch stats here. Dynamic Punch is 50 for 108. 50 for 108, and Shadow Ball is 55 for 120. So a little more energy, but a decent amount more damage, right? So damage per energy, it's, I think, slightly better here. So why would you use that when that Pokemon is going to beat you, and that Pokemon just became the top Pokemon because you have a bait move, you have a bait move that can boost your attack. You have this unique typing that resists a lot of stuff in the meta. So that's why it rose to the top. Someone suggested, and I'm interested to test this out, we talked about how Mudshot and Poison Sting and Psycho Cut were one of the best fast moves in the game in terms of energy generation. Medi has Psycho Cut, and there was no reason to use Psycho Cut when Counter was one of the most broken moves in the game. Now you potentially have a bunch of fighters coming out in Pangoro and Machamp using a Karate Chop, and you are half Psychic here. And you can run a fast charging fast move with the Dynamic Punch that you'll get to quick, and then probably the Nice Punch for coverage for your flyers realistically. So if you were to run, I wish they could, I guess you can't change the, oh yeah, you can just click on it. Perfect. So if you're running Counter, it takes 988 to get to a Dynamic Punch as a 2-turn move. But if you click Psycho Cut, it now only takes 6 to get to a Dynamic Punch. So 6 seconds, which is quite fast for a 108 move. So if I'm going to see one of these 3 Pokemon, I'm probably using Medi with Psycho Cut. Now, it's not like the other 2 don't have play, and Poliwrath actually has more play in the Ultra League still because of this moveset. Icy Wind and Scald. Why I think this is slightly lower is because the main strength of Poliwrath was just being able to cover your weaknesses of flyers with Icy Wind and lower their attack. Now, 2 things happened. One is it's now taking longer to get to the Icy Wind, so you're not getting to it as fast, you're not lowering your opponent's attack as fast, which makes it less valuable. 2 is all the flyers got nerfed with Wing Attack. Wing Attack got nerfed, so you're not going to see as many flyers. So your Icy Wind is probably less valuable right now in this meta. So you're probably still more just relying on Scald at this point. So it still has everything going for it. I just think that with the Icy Wind, with less flyers and less your ability to get there slower, it doesn't make it that strong. Annihilape is such an interesting one because, man, this thing burst onto the scene and I can only think it as so dominant. But it was dominant because of its ability to threaten the Shadow Ball. If you're now taking 10 counters to get to the Shadow Ball, I'm less concerned about that. And if you're looking at other Shadow Ball users, Licky Licky, again, this is not that's a 3-turn move, so you can't really compare. Let me see if there's a 2-turn. No, these are all okay. Runerigus, right? Runerigus has Shadow Claw, which is still one of the best fast moves in the game. It is getting to the Shadow Ball for the first one in 7. 7, right? That's 3 turns faster. So now you have again, they're different secondary typings. Runerigus is a ground and Annihilape is a fighter. So different secondary typings, understood that. But if you now have one of the best fast moves in the game in Shadow Claw on this Pokemon, with the ability to take it to the Shadow Ball quick, and a move count of 5-4-5-4 to get to a Brutal Swing, which got buffed because it's only 35 energy now. So there's your like Night Slash sort of equivalent, maybe even a bit better. I don't think there's a point. I think what made Annihilape so strong was that it was a mixture of, it was just the typing. It was Ghost had a lot of play against fighters, which it resisted all the moveset, and there was a lot of fighters. And then Ghost had, like, again, not that a lot of Psychic, but there was other Ghost Pokemon, there was Cresselia, there's stuff like that. So just having, and it was Shadow Ball is like a great move too. So it just rose to the top just because of its unique typing. But now, because counters nerf so much, and there's other fighters, so like, you got to look at it this way. If you used it, so I know I'm rambling here, but if you use this as primarily because it was so dominant as a duo Ghost fighting, your fighting got nerfed on the counter. Your Shadow Ball, as a result, got nerfed because it takes longer to get to. And there's going to be a rise of other Ghost Pokemon because a bunch of their moves, like Astonish, got buffed and Brutal Swing got buffed, right? So look at all these Pokemon that rose because their moves got buffed. Always the top out though. Licky Licky, again, not a Ghost, but it has a Shadow Ball. Licky Licky, Rollout buffed. Marowak, Fire Swing buffed. Dusknoir, Astonish buffed. Runerigus, Brutal Swing buff. Quillfish, if you want to use this. Poison Sting buff. Right? There's so many other Pokemon. Drifblim, Astonish as well. Like, there's so many other Pokemon, Ghost Pokemon now, that I would want to play ahead of it because you just kind of lost both of your strengths in Annihilape. And that's why I think it has fallen a lot. Okay, I think it's pretty clear, like, there's so many other better options. If you have 7 Pokemon, right? Let's say you have 7 Pokemon and 5 of them got nerfed. Can you still use them on a team? Yes. I don't think they're unusable. Like I said, you can use Pokemon in the 100 in these rankings and 100 and 140 and get by. It is tougher, but it is doable. So again, I would probably look for other fighters and ghosts above if I had the option. But if you don't have the option, I still think it is usable. But just try and try and find other two meta Pokemon. I dwelled a lot on that. I'm going to quickly cover Mudshot and Wing Attack now. Mudshot's a little more interesting because Mudshot users did not fall as much. And why didn't they fall as much? Yes, the energy has now decreased, right? We saw how Mudshot went from this great quick move up here to now being down here with these other moves. The thing is, 4 energy is not bad in the grand scheme of things, right? If you look at this list here, there's Lock On, which is 5, which is we know is broken. Water Shuriken, this move for Greninja, obviously insane. But then there's only 4.5 and 4.33 ahead, and these are really moves that are just a lot of 3-turn moves here: Snarl, Bullet Seed, Rollout. So it's a little slower to get to. So when you're a little slower to get to, you get a little more energy. And then these other moves, which we know just had low damage and high energy. So 4 energy is not the worst. And when you look at the move sets of these Pokemon, what made them so broken before is that they have a really quick first move. So if we go back to the current season, Quagsire only took 4 Mud Shots to get to an Aqua Tail. 4, 4, 4, 4. Mud Bomb, 5, 4, 5, 4. Swampert, same thing with the Hydros, one of the best charge moves in the game in terms of damage per energy, was only a 5, 4, 5, 4, right? So they were insanely fast, and that's what made these water Pokemon so deadly, and that's why all these water Pokemon with Mud Shot were in the top here. Quagsire at 7, Swampert 13 and 14. Again, Non-Shadow Quagsire at 27, and then Whiscash, which got nerfed because of Scald a bit, was still at 36 despite the Scald nerf. So despite them getting nerfed, you're going to see here, they're all still in the top 60 and top 50, if you top 52 if you take away the Shadow. Quagsire, Shadow 13, Non-Shadow 27, Whiscash, Shadow 33, Non-Shadow 46, Swampert 52, Shadow 61. And that's because although you are giving up some of your speed, a lot of these moves are still so quick that yes, you're going to give up like 1 sometimes, but you're not giving, like, we saw the difference on Annihilape. It gave up 1, 1, 1, 1 on Night Slash, and it gave up 2, 1, 1, 1 on Shadow Ball. On these moves, you're not giving that up, right? 5, 4, 5, 4. So you're giving up 1 in the first and none in the second, 1 in the third. Mud Bomb, same thing, 5, 5, 5, 5. So you're giving up 1 in the second time around and 1 in the fourth time around. And that's the thing with these Pokemon. They're still super spammy. So you're not giving, yes, it's going to take 1 extra turn on like the first or second one, but that's 1 second. Usually like once in the first 2 rounds of throwing, as opposed to the other one, which are like 3, 4, 5, right? So you're giving up a lot more, or 2 if you're just throwing Night Slashes, but like if you're throwing the Shadow Ball, you're giving up like 3, 4 sort of thing. So the amount which you're giving up for losing an energy in counter, you're not feeling that with the Mud Boys. So the Mud Boys are still in play here, and with the rise of like Clodsire potentially and other ground type Pokemon and fire type Pokemon that got buffed, I don't think the Mud Boys are going everywhere. Wing Attack is a different story, because this is I was about to say this is not. I was gonna say this is Wing Attack's second nerf, but no, it's not. Sky Attack got nerfed the first time around. Sky Attack was a direct nerf on Noctowl. As you can see in this new rankings, the first is Pelipper at 207. And again, we need to look at what Wing Attack was versus what it is now. So Wing Attack was 4 and 2.5, right? So when you look at your sort of 4 energy and 2.5, it was a good move. Not broken like Shadow Claw. Shadow Claw is 3 and 4. We say it's one of the best fast moves in the game. But 2.5 and 4, you know, Powder Snow, Quick Attack, Vine Whip, these are all good fast moves. Now your Wing Attack is at 3.5 and 2.5. And again, when you say like just a half, that half makes a difference. We saw how much slower it takes to get to the moves with some of these halves. So now, Wing Attack, you're now with Spark. Metal Claw will leave because we don't know if it's going to get a single buff or double buff. But now you're also below like Leafage and Bullet Seed and Poison Jab. And Sucker Punch got buffs, so I'll leave that alone. But like, you drop significantly. And again, it comes down to the charge moves. How quick can you get to the charge moves? And let's just see. Gligar kind of got double nerfed, so I feel bad looking at it. But let's just look at Gligar, because the Gligar was everywhere, right? 5 to an Aerial Ace. 5 to an Aerial Ace. 7 to a Dig the first time around, and then 6 subsequently. Gligar is now using Fury Cutter. We'll just put on Wing Attack just to show you the difference. So it was first time 5555. It is now 666. So 1 slower to get the Aerial Ace, and it's 877 as opposed to 766. So 1 extra each time. You also need to remember that Dig got nerfed. So you went from a 2.3 damage. Let me just make sure these are both Shadow to actually. Okay, good. They're both Shadow. You went from a 2.3 damage per energy move down to a 2.02 damage per energy move, right? So it just kind of got nerfed all over the place. So again, it's like one here, one here. Like these, when you're giving up 1 per or more, that is a substantial change as opposed to giving up like the Mud Boys, which are giving up like 1 every 2. Like that's not as bad, but if you're giving up 1 every turn or more, that's too much, unfortunately. So Gligar at 135 still has play. Flyers all took a hit. So is there, in terms of flying, like Gligar's still like one of the top flyers, right? And because it has Fury Cutter, which is a terrible damage, but a really, really quick move. So it's just again relying on, it's a 1-turn move. So you got to like, if you want to just try to compare to the other one, just divide these by 2 because it's a 1-turn move. So this would be 555 and this would be 7 6 7. Yeah. So again, in terms of flyers are going to be an interesting one because with the Wing Attack, a lot of your main like Mantine, Pelipper, Gligar are all nerfed, and now you're getting a bunch of flying Pokemon that aren't relying a ton on their flying type moves, right? A lot of these rely on their secondary moves. Mandibuzz with Dark, Jumpluff with this Energy Ball is half grass, Talonflame as a as a fire. So they're relying a lot on their sort of secondary typing as opposed to, I mean, don't get me wrong, Gligar relied on Dig. Mantine, I'd say a little less reliant on the water, as more as like Pelipper, which relied on the Weather Ball and tried to land the Hurricane nerf. So this is going to be interesting this season. I'm excited to test everything out here. I'll do it beyond the hype of like all the buff Pokemon, but I'll test some of these nerf Pokemon. Again, my thinking of all these nerf Pokemon is Medi with Psycho Cut. Poliwrath probably has play in the Ultra League just because there's still a lot of dragons. There's a lot of dragons in the Ultra League and probably a little more flyers. And then the Wing Attack Pokemon are just that Wing Attack is now just too low in the damage and energy here to really be useful, quite honestly. So those are probably gone for good. Anyways, that is it. It was a little rambly. But yeah, you guys are used to that by now, right? Anyways, that is it. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.